Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. Tesla has just posted a record-breaking quarter for the second quarter of 23. In this video, I want to review those numbers and also uncover some of the latest trends that are happening with the Tesla story that are tough to spot, but in this video, I'd like to bring you up to speed. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Real quick, in case you missed it, the numbers for Tesla from a production perspective for the second quarter of 2023 was 479,700 units, and deliveries were 466,140. This is a record production and delivery quarter for Tesla. Never before in its history have they produced or delivered this many cars. The delivery estimates for this quarter were around 448,000, and Tesla beat those by about 4 to 5%, which is a pretty significant beat and one of the largest ones it's had in the last few quarters. Deliveries quarter over quarter are about 10.2% higher Q2 versus Q1 and 83% higher versus the previous year second quarter because of the Shanghai shutdowns, their factory shutdowns in China from last year, and that's why they've grown so much year over year for the same quarter. For production, it's the same story, up 8.8% quarter over quarter and 85.5% year over year for the same reasons I stated before for deliveries. What's crazy here is that Tesla produced 510,000 units in the full year of 2020, and Tesla is making almost as many cars in one quarter, in this case the second quarter of 23, versus what they did in a full year in 2020. Just think about that growth for a second. It's been almost 3 years since 2020, full year, and Tesla is already making almost as many cars in one quarter as they did in an entire year in 4 quarters. Absolutely mind-blowing. And this is after everyone said 500,000 units in a year was impossible. If you've been following the Tesla story for a while, you know in the mid-2010s, people were saying there's no way Tesla's going to be able to sell more than 500,000 cars per year. And lo and behold, they're selling almost as many of those in one quarter, in 3 months. Pretty outstanding. Congratulations to the Tesla team and everybody at Tesla. Truly incredible news. Now, this graph also shows how much Tesla is growing. Last year, in the first and second and third quarter, if you combine those numbers, it's nearly as much as what Tesla has done in 2 quarters in 2023. Tesla has delivered as many cars in 2 quarters versus 3 quarters in 2022. Again, showing their crazy exponential growth. Now, if you take their quarter 2 deliveries in production and you basically multiply them by 4 to see what the yearly run rate is, this equals to 1.92 million produced and 1.85 million delivered. Now, this is another great way of looking at these numbers. This is a graph from James Stevenson at @ICannot_enough. What a fantastic username. This is the trailing 12 months on Q2 for each year. So in 2023, Tesla has sold 1.6 million units in the last 12 months as of the second quarter of 2023. And you can really see how much the numbers are growing year over year over year on a trailing 12-month basis. Quite stunning growth. Tesla continues to grow in tight economic conditions as well. If you think about 2023, with the Fed increasing the interest rates and how much that has put a damper on the economy, Tesla is still continuing to grow its product line significantly quarter over quarter in the second quarter, while achieving record-breaking production and delivery numbers. Again, very impressive quarter if we're looking at it through these lenses. And then the big question here is going to be, how is the rest of the EV market doing? We should get numbers from GM, Ford, and everyone else here in the coming days, which I'll cover on this channel very, very closely. And it's going to be very interesting to see how Tesla performs against those automakers, as I expect them to continue growing their market share. So Tesla's growth should be faster than everyone else's, and we'll see if this is the case once we look at their numbers. If you're enjoying this content so far, I would love it if you throw me a like. It helps the YouTube algorithm show this to more people. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Tesla started a delivery wave in Q3 of 2022, which is basically a measure that Tesla took to ensure that they have as many cars in the pipeline so that they don't have these crazy waves when they enter and exit a quarter, so they don't have supply chain disruptions and they have cars available for people so that they don't have to wait in line for too long. And what was fascinating about the second quarter of this year is that the Model S and X production and deliveries were about the same, were basically equal. And this sort of triggered me to go back and look at some of the data that has happened in the last few quarters. And so I looked at this difference for the last 5 quarters. And what's interesting is if you add up the difference between production and delivery for S and X and the 3 and the Y, since the second quarter of 22, Tesla has added about 14,000 S and X's to the pipeline. So they've produced more than they delivered in the last 4 quarters. And if you add up up that difference for the last 4 quarters or so, it adds up to about 14,000 SNXs that are in the pipeline on boats, on a lot somewhere waiting to be sent to the delivery center, on a truck somewhere, but 14,000 of them have been added for the last 4 quarters. And the same thing for the 3 and the Y, they've added about 78,000 units to the pipeline over the last 4 quarters. If you look at it from a days on hand perspective, so if you look at how many cars they delivered in the second quarter of 22 and compare it to their pipeline, there's about 60 days on hand of SNX in the pipeline somewhere for those models and about 15 days on hand at 3 and Y. The other way to think about this is if Tesla decided to stop producing these cars altogether, it would take about 60 days for Tesla to extinguish their inventory, quote unquote, on the SNX, and about 15 days for the 3 and the Y. So what's interesting about here is as SNX deliveries matched production in Q2 2023, I think Tesla's at a point now where they're probably happy with the pipeline and they're going to reduce prices or increase prices on the S and the X so that they can retain that level of inventory in the pipeline for those models so that there's no wait times and then people can just pick up their cars as soon as they're ready, and then they don't really have to lower or increase production to try and meet that demand. They'll just move the price, especially since the S and the X are luxury brands, and theoretically they shouldn't have unlimited demand. There's only going to be a small percentage of people that are going to be able to afford those cars, especially relative to the 3 and the Y. And so I really think Tesla will likely adjust pricing to continue this trend as they continue building the pipeline for the 3 and the Y, which I believe will continue for the next few quarters as they continue building out factories in Austin, Berlin, and Mexico now, which has been announced. And of course, we've had a much rumored Model 3 refresh in the works. This should impact the equation a little bit. We have the 3rd quarter now starting, and a lot of people are expecting this refresh to really launch this quarter. And so Tesla might adjust its equation on how they're thinking about building that pipeline based on how successful that refresh is, which if you look at this quarter, it should be very successful because people are obviously buying a lot of Tesla cars. Now, let's look forward to the second quarter earnings, which should be announced here any day now. Probably will be on the 3rd or 4th week of this month, but we can still sit down given today's numbers and try to figure out where the quarter is going to end. So let's go ahead and dig into those numbers. Real quick, if you'd like to support the channel, I have a link to Athletic Greens in my description below, which is a supplement I take every single day, free travel packs, and vitamin D with your purchase. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you. So the higher delivery number will definitely help with EV margins. So the margins for the electric vehicles have come down quite a bit in the last few quarters, but the higher delivery number is going to allow Tesla to spread more of its cost out through the factories and thus increasing their profitability. For the first quarter of 23, gross margins, if you exclude the lease and ZEV credits, the EV credits that Tesla receives, they did about 18.3% gross margin for the first quarter of 23. And for the second quarter, you have 4 major positives, I believe, that are going to help the margin. The higher deliveries, again, which will spread out the cost for those cars. More localized production. So as Berlin and Austin ship more cars, you're going to have less costs associated to moving those materials around and also moving the cars to those regions. They'll just be produced there, which will help with the costs quite a bit. You also have deflation in the supply chain with raw materials, especially lithium. And I'm curious to see if Tesla's going to be able to recognize some of those in this quarter. And then you also have more SNX in the second quarter versus the first quarter, about double the SNX that they delivered. And those are sold at a higher average selling price, which is what ASP stands for, which will help the price go up on average for every car and help the margins for Tesla. For the second quarter, I expect Tesla to be somewhere around the 20% gross margin mark, excluding lease and ZEV credits. Now, some people have said that it might be lower than Q1, but with this big of a delivery number, I would expect their economies of scale to kick in a little bit more and really lower those costs, and also with the higher SNX to increase their prices as well. So I expect gross margin to come in around 20%, but of course, I could be wrong. This assumes about a 3% drop in addition to the first quarter already depressed prices. So I'm still assuming a 3% drop quarter over quarter, but I'm also assuming a 5% drop in cost of goods sold, which is basically how much money they pay to build the cars because of all those factors that I outlined previously. Energy will also continue to grow into the second quarter. We should expect it to come in significantly higher than the first quarter. quarter as Tesla ramps up their Megapack factory in Lathrop and as they make their energy products more and more available to people. And then we also should expect operating leverage to continue. So this is where the fixed cost that Tesla has as a business continues to be more and more spread out as they grow their business. So their back office workers, the headquarter expenses, their R&D and things like that, those costs shouldn't really change much. But with higher sales, that means more profitability. So we should expect this to continue in the second quarter of 2023. And then full self-driving adoption, which is getting a lot of attention lately, has it increased with the latest versions. 11.4.4 is the latest version, and there's been a lot of buzz about this being a very good version. I've experienced it myself. In my region, in certain areas, it's way better, but there is a little bit of regression. However, I've noticed a lot more people are talking about it, so I wonder if more people are buying the software or renting it out for that $199 a month, which would, of course, help margins because it doesn't cost anything to flip a switch, right? It's just software that people pay for, and then you get it in your car. And then Cybertruck, and this one's going to be really interesting to monitor. I think this is going to start dominating the calls moving forward. So I fully expect the second quarter call to be dominated heavily about when is Cybertruck going to launch? Are you on track to deliver this year? How do you expect this to grow for the rest of the year? So I fully expect this to be a big part of the equation. I don't know how this is going to impact the stock price or anything like that, but as they really near deliveries, I expect this to be a big talking point, especially as YN3 continue to grow. So here are some of my preliminary numbers for the quarter. Let me know what you think of these. I'm going to have finalized numbers a few days before the actual earnings report, but here's where my head is at right now based on some math that I've done. So I'm thinking the total revenue is going to come in at around $25 billion for the quarter. This is a 6.8% increase quarter over quarter and 47.2% increase year over year for Q2. I'm expecting gross profit to come in at about $5 billion. This is an 11% increase quarter over quarter, but just 18.2% year over year growth. And this really highlights the impact of the price decreases to profitability. Revenue increased 47% year over year, but gross profit increased only 18%. However, it's still growth, but not nearly as much as the sales. And again, that's impact from the price decreases. And then the net income, which is the bottom line number, this I'm expecting to come in about 17% quarter over quarter or 30% year over year, which again highlights the price decreases, but it also highlights the operating leverage, right? It's not as much, and my dog's very excited about that number. It's not as big as the revenue number because of those price decreases, but it is higher than the gross profit because of that operating leverage. And so that net income number at around $3 billion is something I would expect to come in. But I would love to hear what you have to say. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about these numbers, what you think about Tesla's second quarter deliveries and production, and let me know where you expect the quarter to come in for earnings. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comment section below. And if you want to see more content from me, click subscribe, which I highly, highly appreciate. And then last but not least, if you do want to support the channel through some merch, I have a link to this shirt in the comment section below as well, if you'd like to purchase that through my merch store. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was valuable and informative, and we'll see you on the next one. Take it easy, everybody. Bye-bye.